Hey everybody, Ben here from DMC Films and Cinderblock Studios, and this week I want to talk to you about the 5 reasons why I love environment design. Okay, so in order to make this video a little bit more interesting this week, I've decided to be working on a drawing while I'm talking, or at least have a recorded drawing playing in the background. This drawing I was working on, just playing around on my Surface, really trying to just get used to working on it a little bit more, and so I opened up a program called Metabang Paint Pro. It's a free piece of software. I highly recommend it as a good free alternative to Photoshop. And if you're looking for a good painting program, go ahead and use that. So the drawing took me about 50 minutes to an hour, so it's going to be running in a little bit of time lapse as we go along here. So why, you might be thinking, okay, why do you love environment design and landscape painting and everything like that? This idea kind of came to me about last Saturday. I was talking with a friend of mine about how worlds, particularly worlds in games, can really tell stories. Not talking about characters here, not talking about like the actual story in a game, but how a specific place, let's say you go to a town in an adventure game, there are little things in that environment that tell stories that aren't directly in the narrative. There are other types of smaller stories that kind of come out of that. And in a traditional landscape painting, there's a lot of things that, again, tell those stories without being so direct about it. For me, that's a lot about saying, here's a rock, but it's near water, and you know it's near water because it's got like moss growing on it. And the story of that environment is that maybe it's wetter there than you think it is, and even though there may not be visible water, so there's sort of underlying symbolism and underlying things that if you're paying attention you start to notice. This kind of talking to my friend about this, then we were leafing through the Bioshock 2 art book, and there's a lot of the environment design in that really kind of shows a lot of the backstory, but it's one of those things where if you're just like gunning it through the game, you're not going to notice it, and that's one of the things that I love. If you know how to pay attention to certain things, environment design is so in depth that a lot of people just tend to overlook it. But that's one of the reasons why I love it, is because there's just so many little details in stories that can be told just through an environment. Along those same lines, I think, unlike a figure drawing or a portrait or even a still life in many ways, all of those have sort of one subject. There's, the figure in particular. It's just either just about their emotion or maybe about their pose, but they might be telling a story by themselves, but their individual elements don't necessarily tell stories. They tell stories maybe about that character, but that's still just one story. An environment, a landscape, can tell lots of different stories. Depending on the scope and the scale of a landscape, you can create, a village down in the valley and a castle up on the hill, and maybe there's conflict between them. So maybe that's like the stories of each of them and how they came to be can be shown in that environment. And it's just the thing. It's that much more complex to have all these different smaller stories that can exist in the larger story of the painting. Another really fun thing about environments is that this is actually kind of goes to a lot of the things that I teach on this channel about understanding the basics, is that environments build so heavily on basic like shape and value and perspective. Now, a lot of other types of design work and drawing and painting start there, and then they go way beyond it. But if you just have a solid foundation in, like, if you can make shapes and forms, you can really paint just about anything in terms of an environment. And landscapes are so much more forgiving. If you mess up on the proportions of a figure, that's going to be a problem. It's going to show through. Doesn't matter how much you kind of render it out. It's just that underlying structure is just going to be flawed. However, if you have a flawed underlying structure in a landscape, you can kind of get away with it. It's a little easier to fudge things in environments that you just cannot do with other types of design. Again, building off of that topic and the previous ones, the way Bob Ross put it, there are happy accidents, and doing landscapes and environments. That's the thing, is you can come up with things by not paying attention. You can just start scribbling and laying out color, really have no idea what you're going to do, and really can start picking out shapes within that. Now you can do that with a variety of subjects. It doesn't have to be a landscape. I've seen people do it with figures. Psychra does it all the time with his figures. But at least for someone like me, I think there's a lot more freedom in sort of seeing the things like, oh, I screwed up. And sometimes when you screw up, it can actually lead to a huge breakthrough in your work. But again, I don't think that's super exclusive to environments, but I think it definitely is easier with them. And the last reason why I love landscapes and environment design is just because it's more fun. Now this is just I guess more of a bias on my part, but I think it's important to kind of talk about why it is fun for me. It's because figures aren't fun. There's a lot of artists that struggle with the human form and just getting everything right. Some artists are just like, I just don't like drawing the figure. I'm like, neither do I. That's why I don't do it. I find really no enjoyment in making figures, and just so I don't. Granted, I'm not good at it, and if I put my mind to it, I could probably be good at it. But I just have no interest in doing it. I find it way more interesting to build a rock with grass around it than I do fleshing out a face or an emotion in a figure. Now, this isn't to say that I don't appreciate this. I love artists that do figures. A lot of people that do pretty much just either like pin-up figures or just sort of like comic book illustration where it's like all figures mostly. I love that, but I just don't want to do it. I have no interest in doing it. I greatly admire people who do work in figures. I just don't have any interest in it, and so thus I am a landscaper. I'm an environment person. When I see something, in like a nice complex 3-point perspective, I get so excited. I'm like, I gotta try that. When I see a portrait, I don't think I'm gonna try that. I'm like, that's really cool, but I don't want to try it. I want to think about what environment that character might be in instead. So that's kind of all I have this week. I've got like 3 or 4 kind of tutorials I have to work on writing, so things are kind of in between projects right now. I've kind of been in between projects for like 4 months so far this year. Or what is it? It's May. So yeah, about the whole entire 4 months of the year, I've mostly been in between projects. Still trying to find a good project that I'm excited about. Testing out a lot of ideas right now. The drawing you just saw, it's got potential for a painting, but still not really sure about it. Let me know what you think of it, though, in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe for more, and this has been from DMC Films and Cineblock Studios. See you guys next time.